It's gonna be something.
All right, episode two. This is our first ever episode two that
Let's
we've
do
ever
it. Come on now.
done. We always get caught up after episode one, but we've got episode two here. I'm back with David. Today we got top sporting events. Last week we did the top 10 movies ever that
Mhm.
we've ever seen. And I feel like we didn't necessarily agree on every movie, but
I feel like we appreciate it.
yeah, we appreciate it. That's a perfect term. Like we both kind of got the movies. We both really
Yeah.
understood the lists. There's going
Not
to be a
gonna be
lot
a,
more
it's
differences
gonna be it's
today.
gonna be different today.
There's going to be a ton more differences today. So we're going our top 10 sporting events kind of on most anticipated or just like what is the biggest to us. And there's going to be a lot of variety here, I
Yeah, we're
think.
literally like the opposite of like we are both
Yeah.
massive sports fans, but just the opposite.
Yes.
Like I'm football, basketball all day. You're
Yeah.
hockey, baseball,
Yeah.
soccer. Like you like soccer a lot more than I do, but then I like soccer, so maybe that's the closest to overlap. And
Yeah,
like
that's
I'll watch
probably the biggest
baseball. You'll
overlap.
you'll watch something like you do fantasy. You're
Yeah,
watching basketball, but like as far as big sports, we're literally just the opposite. So it'll be interesting.
I know. I have a feeling. I think I know what your number one is going to be, but we'll have to see. We'll have to wait and find out.
Yeah,
Do you want to start today, or do you want me to start?
I can start.
All
I can
right,
start.
all right. We'll go. We'll just do this. I think the last time worked well. We'll just go 10, and then I'll do 10-9, and then we'll just go back and forth.
Let's go.
All right.
So,
What's your 10?
all right. The sporting like and what we define as event, like we're just kind of running with it. So there'll be a range, which I think will be the same
Mm,
for you, of what I classify as an event, right?
yep.
Why I categorize things the way I do. So number 10, something I'm pretty confident will not be on your list. Duke versus UNC basketball.
Whoa.
Yeah. So here's the thing.
Oh
Here's the thing.
man.
UNC's always been my favorite college team. I haven't been a huge college basketball guy for most of my life. In the past couple of years, I've gotten way more into it where I'm at like I have UNC basketball notifications on my phone, that sort of thing.
All
I'm
right.
watching every game if I can. Um, so I think it's the best rivalry in sports. If you factor in close proximity to each other, the hatred for each other, the iconic teams in both, right? Like Roy Williams versus Coach K, like the iconic people in it, and the career records. I don't know the number off the top of my head, but in the last like 40 years, it's about like they're both teams are like
They're
500
pretty
against each other.
close.
And I think they're like even like the points, like total points scored is like within 100 or something. It's like crazy how competitive it is. Um, so I think it's the best rivalry in sports. And as someone that has been getting more and more into college basketball, and UNC being my favorite team, those games like they play twice, but it's always the last game of the season is against Duke. Like those games are just electric, and so I always feel like I circle it on the calendar. Um,
Wow,
biggest
I was not
biggest
expecting that.
biggest curveball you'll probably get from me, but Duke
Wow.
UNC is what I got at number 10.
Wow. All right. I mean, that is always a big game on the calendar.
Absolutely.
I don't know that I would say it's the biggest rivalry in sports. There's probably a few,
Like what though? Like what?
like there's some soccer ones, dude, that are
Okay,
like,
I'm talking American sports.
all right,
Maybe
American
maybe
sports, maybe it's up there. I mean, Red Sox Yankees is a classic one, of course, but that's definitely one that's very fan driven.
yeah. And
Um,
and
it's up there. I'll give
yeah.
you that. It's
I,
up
I'd
there.
I'd
I
say
am so surprised by that.
yeah, I knew you would be. I'd say it's got to be the best. Well, I should. I think it's definitely the best college rivalry. In my mind, the only one that compares is Ohio State Michigan
Hmm.
football. But the difference there is that one has been pretty much like pretty lopsided in our life.
Yeah.
Like Michigan is, we could count on one hand the number of times Michigan's beat Ohio State in our lifetime.
Yeah,
Uh,
Michigan stinks. Let's put
yeah.
that out there.
And I think there was a chunk of time where Michigan dominated it before our lifetime. I could be wrong.
Yeah,
I'm not a college football
I think you're
expert, but it's
probably
like
right.
it's not even. The hatred is there and it's iconic in that way, but the competition does not. So that's why I consider Duke UNC best college rivalry.
That's fair. Yeah, that's always a big game. Okay, I'm a little I'm a little
You're a little
stunned right now.
rattled now.
I'm a little bit rattled. I will tell you right now, I don't have anything like that on my list.
That's okay.
I don't have
I
anything
don't.
two teams. That just did not even. There was when I was preparing for this, I was thinking about some curveballs you could throw. How could you kind of not necessarily loopholes because it's not like there's rules or anything, but
Right.
kind of like, all right, what's something that's kind of outside the box? And even while I was thinking of that, something like Duke UNC or Red Sox Yankees, for example, did not even come to my mind.
I know. The reason,
So
so I don't have anything else like this on my list. The reason it like qualified and I did it was just because they play every year
yeah,
2 times, and one of the games is always the last of the season. So it's like a consistent, you know what I'm saying? Like
yeah, I get that.
Red Sox, Yankees, they play a bunch every year,
Right,
but
right.
it's, or, if in like NFL, you can't do, I mean, you could do divisional, but it just,
Yeah.
the
No,
way it's all,
it's a
yeah.
good pick. Solid
So,
pick.
all right, you're number 10.
Man, all right, you caught me
Let's
off
go.
guard there.
I know
Oh
that was
man,
the goal.
my number 10. I don't know if you'll have this on here because I feel like even just among the general population, I value this higher than a lot of people. It's the
Okay.
Winter Olympics.
Okay.
Now, after we recorded last week, I mentioned to you that this would be really high on my list if NHL players were playing in it. But
Yeah.
we also discussed we're talking as of
Current.
right now,
Right.
and as of right
Yeah.
now, there's no reason for me to be excited about the hockey side of the Winter Olympics other than I like hockey. So it kind of is standing on the fact that it is the Olympics, and I'm a big like historical value guy when it comes to sports. I
Mm-hmm.
love international competitions.
Mm-hmm.
I love the curling at the Olympics. I love what else is there at the Winter Olympics? I love the sledding. The bobsledding is great.
Yeah.
But the main event for me is hockey when the NHL players are there.
Mm-hmm.
So for
Is
them
it
to not
still?
be there, it slides into my number 10 just because it's every 4 years and it's the
Yeah.
Olympics. But if hockey players were there, it would probably be up in the top three.
Is hockey still the biggest event of the Winter Olympics for you without the NHL players?
Um, not as much as it would be. If it's like a
Like it
interesting
wouldn't be
game.
close
No,
with
if
NHL
it's an
players.
interesting game, I'll watch it now. But before, if the NHL players are there, I'll probably if it's I mean, when it was in Russia,
Right.
like
Right.
it
Right.
was on in the morning. It doesn't matter who's playing. It could have been Germany and like Latvia. I'd throw it on because it's the best that Germany has versus the best that Latvia has.
Right.
And it's just not that way anymore. So hopefully they get that back, but it
Do
can
you?
only be
So
10 for
you
me.
do you really think that you think the NHL should like take a break like the Premier League will do with the World Cup this winter? Like you think
Yeah.
they should take a break and let them go play?
Yeah, it's only 2 weeks. And I mean it means
Is it only 2 weeks?
yeah, the Olympics is only 2 weeks.
Yeah,
Can
that's
you
really
believe
not that
that?
bad. I was gonna say it's gonna end like it would make the season end a lot
Yeah.
later, mess up the offseason. 2 weeks isn't that bad.
Yeah, I mean, basically what they used to do is they would just get rid of the All-Star break, which is it's obviously not as much, but they just wouldn't have an All-Star game in Olympic years, and then I think they get like a 3 week break because they get like a week sort of on
Yeah,
either side
buffer.
sort of thing. Um, but it doesn't affect the season that much.
That's
They've
not
done it.
no.
The only problem is injuries. Guys have gotten injured there before, and I completely get that, but I mean,
Mm,
it's tough. Like, for example, Connor McDavid has never played at the Olympics,
mm,
and it's a big legacy thing for players now because since they started being allowed to, there's this triple gold thing,
mhm.
and it's Stanley Cup, Olympic gold medal, and World Championship gold medal, which is just like a secondary competition kind of every year.
Sure, sure, sure.
And if guys aren't going to the Olympics, they can't get that. And
Yeah,
it's like that's a big deal when someone does achieve that. So
right.
I don't know. It's not like there is another premier international competition that is regular and has history behind it like the Olympics do. So
Yeah.
I would like to see them go. But yeah, I can
Fair
only
enough.
go in at number 10 for me.
All right.
All right, my number 9 is man, this one's scraped in, I will say, but I think it does deserve a spot. It's the College World Series.
Ooh.
And I'm a sucker for college sports. Not as much as I used to be. There was a point in my life where if if I was watching TV and I saw anything with a college in front of it, unless there was like a Red Sox game or a Bruins game or something like that, I was putting it on. Or watched college swimming, college gymnastics, college, like anything college. I'd even watched college chess before. I just love collegiate sports because I love the ranking system. And I love that there is still the aspect of playing in your conference and then going to these national tournaments and playing teams that you have never seen before, that you have not played in 6 years. You have no idea what it's going to take. The SEC is coming, they're bringing their stuff. The ACC is bringing their stuff. It's just completely different styles. And as a baseball guy, the College World Series is awesome. I hope to maybe go out to Omaha one day because it's probably just an insane atmosphere. The only thing that kind of makes it hard to follow is that the structure is so crazy, but I also kind of like that because it's a completely unique structure. Like no other college sport really does it like they do. I love the College World Series.
Interesting. There you go. I have
Yep.
literally like never watched the College World Series. I could not name a single team that's won it in the last 10 years. But I get that would be on there for you. So.
Hey, that's the beauty of, whereas last week we had maybe 15 things, we're gonna have close to 20 different things on here. We might overlap a little bit, but
I was gonna say you got two that if I made top 20 probably wouldn't make it on.
Yeah.
So there you go. But all right.
All right,
my number 9. So I texted you the other day. I told you I had my list done. Then a day later I text you. I said I have a new one.
Yeah.
This was the one.
Okay.
I was on FaceTime with a friend. I was talking about it. And he asked me, he's like, assuming that this would be high on my list. Totally didn't even think about putting it on there. But it's here, number 9. It's Christmas Day basketball.
Okay.
Christmas.
Okay. This is good. For me, at least, this used to be a big deal, and it has gotten significantly worse.
Yeah. So because of the jerseys is probably what you used to love, right?
Yes.
So they make a big deal out of Christmas Day games every year, and it starts at like noon, and then it's like noon until 1 a.m. There's one there's some overlap, but there's a basketball game happening. And it's just something about it. Like Christmas is such a great holiday. And then for me, going watching the games, I used to love what they did with the jerseys, which obviously is not the same, but it's still basketball and I love it. And it's always like such good matchups. Like what are there, 6 games maybe? I'd have to like 6-ish games of just like great matchups. Like this year, the Warriors and Grizzlies are going to be playing. This is something that stemmed from like beef that's been going on for a while. Like they make these the marquee matchups. There was a time in my life where my favorite team was playing on Christmas. It's been a while since that's been the case because they're not good enough to make it. But I love Christmas Day matchups. They're just so fun to watch. I can like remember being, I don't know how young, probably young, but like the Celtics and Magic were playing one time and just like loving it. I was probably like 11 or 12 or something like that. Like I love Christmas Day matchups. I love the full slate of NBA games on a holiday. Just love it.
The NBA is the closest real sport to the WWE, just based on the fact that they will rig the schedule for stuff like no other sport does this really, where opening day you'll have like Bucks and Celtics or like, you know what I mean? Like
they
those
make
matchups.
it. Yeah.
Christmas Day, they'll be like, all right, let's set it up so that we have who we want to, like everyone else just kind of makes schedules. The NBA, which is a credit to that. Like, I don't know why the other sports don't do this.
I don't know why you wouldn't. Like,
it's a good
you're
thing.
Gonna play, right? Like you're guaranteed to play this team.
Yeah.
Might as well put it on like a prime time.
Do you remember the commercials they used to have too?
Oh yes.
Some of the NBA Christmas commercials were great back in the day.
Man, so good. I remember when I learned some of them were fake. It like broke my heart. Like for real broke my heart.
Yeah.
Like the one where they're shooting and
the Jingle Bells one.
I really believe like they all shot it on time and all of them
I just figured that they just took a ton of takes.
I know. It's just fake. They had the dribbling one, which is pretty cool.
Yep.
And it was like an advertisement for the jerseys as well as just that used to be so cool. But
yeah, I do think they've definitely have made it less of a spectacle recently, which is unfortunate because when they had the new jersey, and I don't understand why that is, because Nike loves making jerseys, as we've seen.
I know. maybe their ratings just weren't what they wanted for Christmas. Who knows?
Maybe.
Like
You know what it probably was? Those short sleeve jerseys. Once they
those
brought in the
jerseys,
short
those are
sleeve
so
jerseys,
bad. Oh my gosh.
I feel like that they were towards the end, right?
Yeah, I get confused on what was when. Short sleeve jerseys, because there's this time where the like teams had short sleeve
Yeah,
jerseys.
after the
Like you
Christmas,
remember
I
the
think.
the second LeBron Cavs run,
Hmm.
they had a navy blue short sleeve jersey that they wore more than anything on the road.
Yeah,
Like I think the 2016 finals, they wore that
yeah, they
jersey
did.
like 2 or 3
Yeah, the
times.
block is in that jersey, I think.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah.
So it was a thing for a while. The Thunder had a white short sleeve jersey for a little bit, but
Yeah.
hey,
All right.
I still love it. The matchups,
Yeah,
it's
that's
still a
fair.
full slate of basketball.
All right. Fair enough. All right.
All right,
What's your 8?
8. This is one that I'm assuming we will overlap.
Okay.
It's the World Series.
Okay. Yeah, I have that on here somewhere.
I was gonna say I
Sort of.
assume.
Sort of.
Uh,
I have a variation.
Okay, okay. Um,
I mean,
so
I'm surprised this is on your list, to be honest.
so this is my thing. Is like I do like baseball a lot, right? Like basketball, football are by far like those are the two sports I love. Like I'm obsessed with.
Hmm.
I still really like baseball. Like I love going to a Red Sox game. I consider very legitimate big Red Sox fan. Like
Okay.
I'm consistently paying attention throughout the season as much as I might not watch a ton, but I'm aware of how they're doing the whole year. I'm aware of players that are getting injured, things like that. And I will there's like something romantic about playoff baseball and like World Series baseball that I can really appreciate.
Yeah.
And like we've been lucky enough that I've watched the Red Sox win a couple World Series, and so like watching them win that, I like it's a really just great experience. I can like remember being freshman in college,
Yeah.
watching them play the Dodgers. I can remember being with my dad, Game 6 against the Cardinals, 2013. I can remember the craziness of, was it Game 3, the one that had an insane ending where
Yeah.
Middlebrook
Yep.
stripped the
Game
guy.
3.
Game 3, like I remember that, the heartbreak, like even the non-Red Sox ones, right? The Cardinals Rangers 2011 sort of had some
Oh, Nelson Cruz, dude.
had some tough.
I
It was
think, were
tough for
you the
me.
one that told me that story about how he was getting ready for the celebration and
Something
taking
like that.
steps towards the infield and then they hit it over his head?
Something like that.
I
Yeah.
think you were the one that told, I think you'd seen that
'Cause-
somewhere and then you told me about that. And that
'cause
was,
this is,
that's one of the, that's still to this day,
one of the craziest
just like a like crazy kind, almost sad kind of thing. Like, cause you can't understand where he's like,
Yeah. And then, and he was crazy that playoffs, right? Where he hit like
Yeah.
7 home runs or something. He was on
yeah,
like a tear.
that era of the Rangers was when he kind of was like, people started to recognize Nelson Cruz.
Right. And obviously we had the significance with the Rangers Cardinals matchup for us back as 12-year-olds playing MLB The Show all the time.
Oh man.
And so I watched that World Series, like every game of that World Series on YouTube at one point, even like after. So the World Series is just like, baseball is definitely not my favorite sport, but I can appreciate like the World Series in October. Like,
Do you think there's something to do with the fact that it's gearing up for playoff baseball now? Like, is that because
no,
you do get like that sometimes when stuff gets
So-
in season, you kind of
No,
get
no.
on it.
there's no doubt that every summer I go through a spurt where I'm like a huge baseball fan. And it's like, I love baseball as much as anybody else in the world, and it lasts a short time. But I think I would put I would
Okay.
put this on my list any time of year because I can appreciate, like, I know I do love baseball, you know?
Yeah. Okay.
To an extent. So it would feel wrong to not have the World Series on there.
Fair enough. All right. I appreciate that as a baseball fan myself.
There you go. There you go.
My number 8 is the NCAA hockey tournament.
Okay. The Frozen Four.
Not just the Frozen Four, though, the whole thing,
the whole thing.
because
Yeah.
the NCAA hockey tournament is great because there's only 16 teams in. So part of what makes it so great is kind of figuring out who's going to make it in. And then because it's only 16 teams, everyone in there has a chance to win the whole thing.
Mhm.
Some of the other tournaments that I'm sure we're going to mention later, you know some teams aren't going to win it. As much as you'd
Sure.
love to dream that they might, they're not going to.
Sure.
The NCAA hockey tournament, there is occasionally a 4 seed in the region, so whatever it is,
Yeah, sure,
13
sure.
through 16, that will have a strong first game, and they could legitimately make a run at the whole thing. You only got to win 4 games to win the whole thing.
Yeah.
So it's pretty cool tournament. Obviously, I love hockey, and there's something different about non-pro hockey. The way that it's played, it's just a lot more skill, a lot more finesse than the pros, even though the skill level is not as high. It's just the
Sure,
style
sure.
that they play. So I'm sure this one is not on your list. I would
That would be correct. Yeah.
it would be the most shocking. It would be more shocking than the Duke UNC thing if this was on your list. But
Yeah, no, I've
um,
never watched
yeah, this is one that
this
I just want to
tournament.
throw in. I also have great memories. I've grown up. I loved BC. So I had great memories just watching them win a few times. There's been some crazy, crazy games that just are imprinted on my memory. There was a crazy BU win, um, crazy Providence win over B. Like there's just been some crazy finals, and
Yeah.
it's always a great time with the crowd. And we'll probably talk about it a little bit later. But I mean, playoff hockey is just incredible.
Sure.
So
Sure.
I had to find a spot
Respect it.
for
I
it on my
respect it.
list.
Makes sense for you.
Number 7 is, if I'm correct, I'm not correct. We'll get to one later. Number 7 is the Winter Classic. Now,
Oh,
much like we were saying with playoff baseball and how there's just something a little bit different about it, the Winter Classic is just, there's just something majestic about it.
mm, mm,
It's
it's true.
it has lost a little bit of its novelty with the fact that it's now been around for over 10 years, as well as the fact that they have other outdoor games.
Outdoor.
But
It
to
really
me, the
should be
Winter
the one.
Classic is still just the premier outdoor game. The vintage jerseys are great. I would love to see them spread it around the league a little bit more. They have kind of dipped back into the well a lot. I mean, the Bruins are going about to play in their 4th one, if I'm not mistaken. But
Do they
it's
still wear
just,
the those yellow jerseys?
no,
Or
that's
is
a
that a
new
one
one every
time?
time.
Oh,
Yeah,
okay, that's
so
cool.
they'll have their 4th vintage Winter Classic jersey.
I
Um,
loved that yellow one when they
yeah,
played the
I do
Flyers.
own
What
all
year was that?
three. Um,
Okay,
so
Jersey guy.
hopefully I'll get the 4th one.
Yeah.
I'm hoping they go with something brown this year. It's at Fenway again, but yeah, it's just something, and it's the thing about the Winter Classic that at first it wasn't gonna have a spot on here, but it's one day a year, so it's something that you can look forward to. It's not something, in the rest of the season you're gonna play teams multiple times. The Winter Classic is a one-time thing, even if the Bruins are playing at 1 p, which is another thing that they've kind of messed up recently. They'll have other games on that day. It used to be the only one, I think.
Oh,
Um, so even if there's a Bruins game on at 1, or another important sporting event on at 1 or something, I'll tune into the Winter Classic, even if it's not my favorite teams, because it's
hmm.
just such a
Yeah,
spectacle.
sure. That's a good one. I like that.
Yeah.
It's definitely not on my list, but I do
Yeah.
like that.
Yeah, it's
Okay.
just something about like the history of hockey. Like it's just such a, and the other thing is it's such a unique, no other sport can really do that with the same effect. Baseball's kind of
Right.
tried with the Field of Dreams, but it's not like kids grew up in a cornfield. Like pretty much any kid that has played hockey has played on a pond at some point. So
Right.
it just like brings you back to that.
Yeah. Yeah. The only if you could somehow play like an NBA game on like a street court outside,
Yeah,
that's
Rucker
the only
Park.
thing that could somewhat do it. But it like
Yeah,
you can fit 20, I mean, well, not 20, but tens of thousands of fans. And at the Winter Classic,
right.
there's not an outdoor basketball location that's going
No.
to fit enough. But it's a good one. All right. My number 7. This is another one that I am assuming, I'll be shocked if we're not overlapping. It's a World Cup.
Okay, yep, that's on there somewhere.
So I am a not nearly as big a soccer fan as you are.
Uh,
Um, Depending on the time of year, I will think soccer is a good sport, or like I'll find it horribly boring. But the World Cup is one of those things that like every 4 years when it comes around, that time of year, it's different this year, but normally it's in the summer when there's not other sports that I am super into going on, and I just kind of get really invested in it. I've had the unique experience of watching the World Cup with a foreign exchange student rooting for another country that was actually had a chance at winning it. And so kind of being with them and seeing the way they view soccer in that country and how important like France winning was to them, that kind of added a whole level of appreciation for it. So it's just, you'll dive deeper into why the World Cup is great, but it's just such a special every 4 years international tournament. Really cool. So
yeah, I had a feeling
I'd
that
have
was
it
going
on
to be
there.
on your list.
Yeah,
That
happy.
was one that I thought that we would overlap on for sure, because
Yeah.
we've talked about it before, and I know
Right.
we talked about it, at what the spectacle of it, and yeah, it's a special event for sure.
Yeah. All right. My number 6, opening Sunday for the NFL.
Huh.
As
Okay.
someone that loves football, absolutely loves the Patriots, there's just something about when it comes around and it's 1 o'clock on a Sunday and I'm watching a bunch of football and I just get to sit back and there's games all day that I just love. Like they got the primetime games on, Sunday night football is iconic. Thursday night football is really fun because it's like that midweek start the NFL week. There's special stuff about each slot, but the 1 o'clock slot just like brings back memories of being a kid, watching the Patriots at 1 o'clock, because that's when most of their games are, is just the best to me. And the season is so short in the NFL, and there are so few games that when it comes back around, there's just more anticipation with it, right? Like I'm excited basketball's starting soon, but I can also recognize that I cannot watch a ton for the first 2 months of the season, and I still can watch
Right.
my team play 60 games and then the playoffs take 2 months. Like the season is so long. When it's so short and so condensed in only a few games, it coming back around, the excitement is just unique with it.
Okay.
And
Is
so
there anything, does it take away at all that the Sunday is not the opening day of the season though? Like having, like, how much better would it be if the 1 o'clock games were, that was the season started? Like how that Thursday game kind of stinks.
I would love it, but I mean, I get what the NFL is doing. The Thursday game, it's the Super Bowl champion from the previous year playing, and there's something like when the Patriots would win a Super Bowl, it was cool when the Patriots are playing on that Thursday night and they're doing their like banner reveal, and there's nothing else in the football world happening. This is the first game they're unveiling the Super Bowl championship they just won. So I kind of get it. Like, there is something cool about that, but it's the full day of games that really just, it's 1 o'clock. Like I come home from church, had my lunch, like I love it. It's just so good. So that's why the opening Sundays, there's something unique about it for me.
Yeah, that is nowhere near my list.
Yeah, I knew it wouldn't be.
Like when I was making my list, I wrote down just anything I could think of, basically, and then ranked and then numbered them all. That did not even come anywhere near entering my brain to go on the paper.
I makes sense to me.
Yeah.
So that's all right. Your Christmas basketball?
No.
Okay, so I'm guessing I'm 3 of 5. You didn't even consider.
Yeah, something like that.
I like that. All right.
Okay. My number 6 is the Summer Olympics. So it's gone down for sure recently, but when we were kids, the Summer Olympics was must-watch TV. I mean, because we had prime Michael Phelps, prime Usain Bolt, just going for gold medals all the time. And it seemed like one of them was always on every night for some reason, I guess because they did so many events and won so many events. But it seemed like for that 2 weeks, the Olympics were the biggest thing in the world. And it does not seem like that is the case anymore. They're still, I mean, people still care about it. People still tune in, but especially the last two, this last summer and the last winter ones, it just seems like the hype hasn't really been there for it. But for me, I still love the spectacle of it. Like I said, with the winter, a lot of that stuff also rings true with the summer. It's just,
Yeah.
it's for a lot of sports, it's the premier competition. Winning an Olympic gold is the best thing that you could ever do in a lot of these sports. So I just think it's so cool to watch the best of the best from all around the world all come and all compete. And kind of like I was saying with the college sports earlier, it's kind of a cool thing when you see like the Americans show up and the Canadians show up, or the Jamaicans show up and they're good at these things, and the Americans dominate these things, and then like China dominates diving every year. Or like a lot of these countries have stuff that they are good at pretty much every year. And so it's cool to watch that and see kind of like who's the next star in this sport.
Gotcha. It's the Olympics are just iconic. Like they're
Yeah.
huge. I just could not care less, to
I
be
was gonna
honest.
say,
Like
I didn't think you were a big Olympics guy.
I just don't find it. I don't know. I don't enjoy the sports. Like
Yeah, that's fair.
I get why it's a huge deal to a lot of people. If I could go Olympics could come by, I don't watch a single second of the Olympics and I would be fine.
It's a weird one for me because there's the spectacle of it, and then there's the actual sport. Like the biggest sports that you'll watch that, you know, Michael Phelps is in, like swimming, gymnastics, running. Those aren't necessarily my favorite ones, but they all are also sometimes the ones that I'll watch the most because it's a giant spectacle. But like team handball, you don't really get to watch that a lot except for the Olympics. And that sport is awesome. Water polo is awesome, is hilarious. You just watch people try to drown each other for like an hour. So I totally get why some people don't like it, but for me, it's just, it'll always be big.
Yeah, I get that. I get that.
All right.
My thing with the Olympics is like all the sports, they're either sports that if it wasn't a worldwide competition, I would never watch. Like
Yeah.
sprinting, swimming, I would never watch. And then the sports that I would watch regardless, like basketball, soccer, hockey, they're not that
It's not a
great.
biggest
Like
thing. Yeah.
NHL players aren't playing hockey, soccer, like World Cup way above the Olympics,
Right.
you know, Euros. Like there's times where a lot of the best players aren't playing in the Olympics, I think.
Yeah.
And then basketball is just at a point where it's like it's just a waste of time because the US is going to win and it's not going to be close. So
Yeah. It would have
it's
been
like,
cool to grow up a little bit earlier when basketball was a little bit more of a competition.
because I mean, like the dream team obviously was created because there was a loss. The NBA players came in. That would have been incredible to watch,
Yeah.
even though they dominated. And then like 2008, the
Right.
men's team, the Redeem team that came together because they had just lost. So that happened in our lifetime. But I mean, 2012, waste of time. Like they killed
Yeah.
everybody. 2006, like
Right.
it just last year was the most interesting because they lost games at the beginning and people were like, oh, the US is this it? Like they're going down. And then they went on a run, they won easy. It's like, no.
Yeah.
So
And like I said,
that's
it's definitely gone down recently. Like if we had done this when we were 8 years old or 12 years old,
sure.
even like
Be
it would
higher
have
up
been a
on your
lot
list.
higher because of some of the, and even like all these weird sports that are in it now, like 3-on-3 basketball. I don't understand why that's in the Olympics.
Yeah.
It's just, it's getting a little strange. So I had to throw it a
Yeah.
little lower, but just for the
I get
historical
it. I get it.
significance and the memories, had to
Yeah.
throw it on there.
Get it. Another one that's not definitely not on mine, but go ahead.
Man, this one might be on your list, but I'm not 100% sure based on some of the stuff we've talked about. I think it will be, but I don't know.
Okay.
It's March Madness.
Okay.
Is that on your list somewhere?
Yeah, it is on my list.
All right.
Absolutely.
I'm glad that
Absolutely.
made your list. I mean, there's just nothing like, I know you were talking about NFL Sunday. There is nothing like those first 2 days of March
Oh
Madness
my
when
gosh.
from noon there's at least one, probably 2 or 3 games on until like midnight, almost 10
You got
o'clock.
what 32 games in 2 days?
Yeah, like
there's it's nothing like it.
it's just unbelievable. Now, it's also the hype around it. It's a little bit less now that we're out of school, but I remember when we were in high school, part of the excitement of March Madness was there's about 10 games going on while we're at school, and some of the teachers are putting it on the screen.
Oh,
Dude,
dude,
that
like
was the best. If you got
senior
a
year, bro,
teacher that would put the game on the screen, that was
bro,
a
and
jackpot.
like senior year of high school, I was sitting in class. Like most classes, I have a game on.
Oh
Even you know what
yeah.
I'm saying? Like it, yeah, it's so different.
I mean, there were times
It's,
where college it would be a giant lecture or whatever, and I'm like, all right, I completely get this. Pull up what's on the March Madness. Boom. Four
mm,
games at once, each in a quadrant of my computer,
yep,
just checking them all out. If a game gets close, you blow it up, you put that full
yeah,
screen, you watch the end of it, you go away at halftime, you come back. Now it does, I have sort of smartened up to the fact that while the games in the later rounds are better games, the later rounds kind of stink because you're so juiced up from having all those games. You have 32 games in 2 days, and then like 2 days later, you have 16 games in 2 days or whatever it is. And then once you start getting to like the Elite Eight, it's just it feels like there's nothing happening almost because
because
you're going
there's
to like,
less games.
okay,
Yeah,
there's 2 games today, and then there's a break, and then there's two, like it
yeah.
just gets, it feels like it's so spread out. But the sheer pandemonium of those first 2 days, and this is what I was referring to, and like there's no chance that like a 16 seed is gonna win
No,
usually,
yeah,
but
no, no.
when you
But
get
like
when
a
you get
16
the
seed,
inevitable like one of every 3 years Duke is gonna lose to a 15, those games are
right?
incredible.
Like a 16 seed, a 15 seed won't win the whole thing, but they can end a favorite
Yes.
chances in the first game.
Yeah.
Unbelievable. And like there are teams that go on runs, right? Like
Right.
plenty of teams that are way low. Um, it's pretty. It's craziness.
Yeah. It's I still honestly don't understand how it happened, because basketball, to me at least, is a sport where the better team should win more often than not, like compared to something like hockey where it's a lot can be a lot tighter because of just the function of the game. Like basketball, if you're a better shooter, chances are you're going to make more baskets. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
So the
But
fact that a team
I mean,
can go like can have such a great season and then lose to this team that got in just because they won their crappy tournament, it's just is amazing to me.
yeah, I think it probably has to do with the age of players, right? Like
Mm, true.
18, 19-year olds. Not most of a lot of them, like college basketball is huge, but they're like the stage is completely
True.
is much bigger than anything you've ever done. And so there's just, I mean, even like the seniors, the 22-year-olds, like you're not that old, right? So
Right.
the magnitude of it is pretty crazy. And so I imagine the pressure, and it's just teams bring energy for these crazy games. You know, you're a 16 seed playing a 1 seed,
Yeah.
which they very rarely a 16 seed wins.
Only
15,
once,
but
right?
I think so.
Yeah,
It was just beating Virginia, right?
I think
15's
so.
happened a
I
couple
don't think that's
times.
ever happened again. Yeah.
Yeah. Um, but it's like some of these teams where it's just they bring crazy energy. You
True.
can have an off day shooting. Like
True.
you can be a better shooter, but sometimes you're just off. So it's crazy. But that's number
Yeah.
5 on your list.
That is my number 5.
All right. That's number 5 on my list as well,
No
actually,
way.
which is crazy. We didn't have
Oh,
with the movies.
no, we didn't have an exact match.
We got it. Number 5
Nice.
for all the stuff you said. And the one thing I'll add that's crazy is like most people fill out a bracket.
Yeah, true.
Like pretty much most people I know fill out a bracket. Almost everyone. Most of the people that I talk to are filling out a bracket don't pay attention to college basketball. You know what I
Right.
mean? And it's just
Yeah.
how often you get a group of people to fill out their predictions for a 64 team tournament when they have no idea any of the teams. Like they just guess. And
Yeah.
people will do it and for fun. Like so many people do it without money involved or anything, right? Just
Right.
because it's March Madness. Like there's just nothing like that in sports.
Yeah,
Um,
that is true.
and it's just pretty cool. Like it's so fun. I do being in a group where you all have brackets and everybody's bracket is so different because there's just so many games.
Yep.
Um, and for some reason, like I care about these two teams in the first round, colleges that my like maybe haven't even heard of because I picked one of them to win in my
That's
bracket. So it's
true. That yeah,
like
that is another great
care.
point.
I care about
You get
everything just because
so
of
into
that.
every single game because
Exactly.
unless it's two teams that like unless your bracket's already gone and it's two teams. But
Right.
yeah, that's true.
And it's
Man, two
just
years ago, oh man, do you remember the Gonzaga UCLA game?
mhm,
If if UCLA had won that game, I would have won the whole bracket.
it's
And
crazy.
Gonzaga hit a half court shot. And I
Killing
remember
them.
being like,
That was
oh
Jalen Suggs
man,
hit that, right?
this is like this is where it's gonna end. UCLA, they're down two, like Gonzaga just took the lead. And then they went down and hit a layup with like 1 second left. And
Yeah.
I was amazed. I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm still in it. We're going double. And then they just drilled a half court. And I was just in
Killer,
disbelief.
dude.
I was in
It,
disbelief.
it's amazing. And I've been lucky as a fan where in the last 10 years, my favorite teams played in 3 championships, right? And it like the
Mhm.
Villanova one where they hit the buzzer beater, just heartbreaking. But then the next year coming back and they won. Like I can remember watching that game and just being so excited. Last year, UNC goes on somewhat of a fairy tale run, and then you know what
Who
happened? They
won? Who
lose
won last year?
Kansas.
Oh yeah, right. That was kind of a yeah,
UNC started out dominated the
right.
first half, and then they just fell apart. And it was just such a like Hubert Davis's first year as a head coach. The team was just okay the
They
whole
were
year.
like
I
a
think
were they like an eight or something?
yeah, eight like not a
Yeah.
high seed, and then they just went on this run. Final four playing against Duke and Coach K's last game ever. We beat him in the Final Four. Like I can't tell you how much joy that brought
Oh
me, and it was an
man.
incredible game. It felt that run was just historic, and I wanted them to win so bad, but it didn't
Yeah.
happen. So it's all right.
Yeah, there's something awesome too about if you like support a team and they are not expected to win, those runs are just awesome when
Like
you're
Syracuse
upsuiting.
had
Syracuse
one.
has had a few that
Yeah,
have just been awesome to follow.
yeah,
So that aspect of it is
they're the
awesome
best.
too.
But
Man, I can't believe we got an exact
I know
match.
that's kind of funny. That's
That
kind of
is
funny.
crazy.
All right,
I guess maybe that's where our
our
interests
minds.
meet.
Yeah,
Yeah, okay.
the college sports basketball. Um, so number four, uh, 3 and 4 were the toughest for me in
Really?
ranking which
Okay.
one went which went three, which went four.
Okay.
Like,
I have ones like that, so
yeah,
further
my
ahead.
top two, it was no doubt that these were the top two, and it wasn't that hard for me to put them 1, 2,
Hmm.
3, 4, same thing. They had to be 3, 4, but like which one is which? I could change my mind tomorrow. It's really tough. But four is the NFL playoffs for me. So wild card, divisional, conference rounds, um,
Not even close to my list.
which is ridiculous. As just as a football, like absolutely loving football the way I do, there's like the playoffs are just the best. Like there's nothing like the playoffs um, in any sport. But the fact that it's all one game, winner go home every round, um, it's just the playoffs are so hard to make in the NFL. And
Are they though? Like losing
yes,
teams have gone in the playoffs.
yeah, but rarely.
So from that aspect of it,
Okay, but like percentage wise, it's
but
much
like
less than
you
any other
the
sport.
NFL playoffs are you can be it's definitely a sport where you basketball's had some weird ones too, but it's definitely a sport where you can have like the worst season and still make the like 500 teams are in it until like the last day, aren't
But
like
yeah,
an
but
8-8 team is
that's also because of the competitiveness of the NFL.
all right.
You know what I'm saying? Like
Yeah. But from that aspect of it, you know what I mean? Like you don't have to have a great regular season to get in the playoffs.
record wise comparatively to other sports, but it's just because the league isn't lopsided like most other sports are.
Okay.
You know what I'm saying? Like the NBA,
To an extent, yeah.
we got 10 teams that are terrible. You know, like terrible. You don't
True.
have 10 NFL teams that are terrible. Um,
Yeah.
and it's just the do or die. I love it. I think it's just interesting the way division winners get the home field. Used to be, I don't like the change that has happened in the NFL, which is probably why this is at 4 and not 3.
What's
Where
the
the
change?
7 teams make it. It used to only be
Right.
6.
Okay. Yeah, that's a
Not
weird one.
not as bad as the 17 game season, but bad. I don't. I thought it was better when 2 teams got a first round bye, where like that second seed still really meant something. You got a first
Yeah.
round bye, got the home field in the second game. Like the fact that you can be a 2 seed playing on wild card weekend now, I just don't love. But
Yeah, I agree with that.
needless to say, it just I love football. I love the playoffs is just so electric, and obviously greatest stretch of human history to be alive as a football fan has been our lifetime as a Patriots fan.
Yeah, I was gonna say, not if you're not from New England.
As a
If you're
Patriots
from
fan,
anywhere, if you're a fan of any other team,
oh yeah, it's the worst.
you've hated it for the last 20 years.
But the number of just incredible playoff games we've seen as Patriots fans is just I love the NFL playoffs so much.
I do wish that we were more conscious of what was going on when the Patriots were a little bit easier to root for. I was like, from a just a national perspective, like
I wish
the
I could have
Patriots weren't
experienced.
hated. It wasn't like the Empire's winning every year.
Yeah.
Like when the Patriots were still somewhat an underdog, and it was like, wow, look at this scrappy Patriots team.
Wish I could have experienced that 2001 year where you know they like never won in history. Came into the year, their superstar quarterback gets hurt week 2. Started out poorly, like nothing seemed like it was going their way. And then in the Super Bowl, they play what's supposed to be the start of a dynasty, the greatest team on turf, the Rams. And then it was the start of our dynasty. Like, wish I could have experienced that. And then obviously that in 04 for the Red Sox. Like if we were born a little earlier, wish we could have experienced those for real. But needless to say, NFL playoffs and the week, like you play one game and then it's a week of buildup for the next game. So good.
Yeah, that was never coming anywhere near my
I know
list,
it wasn't.
say.
I know it wasn't.
I'm surprised that I feel like I know what you've done, but I will say it did surprise me a little bit to have it at 4.
Okay.
I think I know what you've done, but we'll see.
Yeah. I was gonna say, knowing me, it's probably easy enough to predict what the next 3 would be, seeing how I've split stuff up.
Yeah,
but
I think I know. Okay,
yeah.
so you mentioned how your number 9, the Christmas Day games, you didn't have it on your list. And then I texted you and said, this is the one I forgot. It's number 4. I don't know why, but I just didn't consider it. And I would have been kicking myself if I did not include this, especially the last probably 5 or 6 years. It's the Champions League final.
Oh,
I mean, this is a global
you forgot about
spectacle.
That. That's crazy.
I don't know how I did not have this.
I almost
at first.
had that on my list.
It's just, for me, there's nothing like the structure of world football or soccer. We could say soccer because we're American, whatever. Soccer is a British term, by the way. Have you heard that?
I did not know that.
People from the United Kingdom came up with the word soccer because it was short for association football. So they took from association, the middle part, and made soccer.
I like that. I like the fact that
and now they hate it. But whatever.
It's fun.
World soccer, just the setup is so cool, and the fact that they have a true club world championship, I think, is awesome. Unfortunately, it's not typically that competitive. I think only 2 non-European teams have won, and they're both from South America. So it's just a very, it's not necessarily a ceremonial thing, but it's not super competitive, which makes the Champions League almost the de facto like world championship.
Mhm.
I mean, you still have to go win the actual one, but the team that wins the Champions League is considered the best team in the world at that
Yeah.
moment.
Yeah.
Um, and just this concept of taking the best teams from domestic leagues and then playing them against each other until you have just one team. I don't know. I just love it. And I respect what they do with their league system. And, you just rack up points until you find a champion. But for someone that has grown up with playoffs, basically having a year-long playoff to decide who is the best of the best is awesome to me. So,
It's there's
and
something really
it's
cool about it for
yeah,
sure.
and as I mean, most of our sports are series. So when we get to the finals, it's not as much of a spectacle as it could be. Um,
Yeah.
but there's something
The
about having it be that one game. It's a completely neutral site typically. Occasionally it will be like you'll get like a English team at Wembley Stadium or something like that. But you have these, like I said before, it's like an English team and a German team or an English team and a Spanish team. Those are the best because you have like these different styles of play coming against
Mhm.
each other. It's a little bit tougher when it's like England versus England because it's like all right. They used to do it, and I almost wish that they went back to it. They used to do it where it was only the champions, so it wasn't like one through
Oh,
four. It was only the league winners, which was makes it like a true Champions League. But I like certain things
but
about how they
it's
do it now, and
yeah, but it would also feel wrong, like Liverpool finishing second in the Premier League. Like that team's so good to
right,
not have them in the Champions League, and then maybe they're winning the Premier League the next year. Like I feel like you have to have it the way it
right.
is.
I
But
do like being. I like that you get to see all these teams. It's a little bit weird when a team wins the Champions League and finishes like sixth in their domestic league because it's like, all right, are they really the best? Or the structure, at times, I mean, that's the playoff structure though. Sometimes
yeah,
who we know is the best team is not actually the winner because of the way that's set up. But yeah, it's just such a spectacle, and it's something that over the last few years I try to set aside. I try to not make plans during the Champions League final. It doesn't always work out, but I
yeah,
try to set aside time to watch that. So
yeah.
I
Sure.
cannot believe I almost forgot it.
That's
I
crazy.
cannot believe it.
It's probably because you haven't seen your favorite team playing it in so long. So
I know, but I do have memories of it. My favorite team has won though, so
they have.
we
Yeah,
have
that's
that. I don't know how
fair
many your
enough.
team has won, but
Fair enough.
um,
This is the year though.
yeah, well, maybe. Okay, so for you, you were saying you had trouble deciding 3 and 4. Is that right?
Yeah.
For me, 2 and 3, it's all like they're pretty much the same on like the same level. I don't really know how to. It's tough because I think there are aspects of both. I think number 3 as a whole, the MLB playoffs. Um, if we were doing, I don't know how we would do this, but if we were doing just like the finals for some reason, MLB would probably be 2. But I
Really?
think as a whole, like the
Yeah.
World Series would probably be my
Yeah. Yeah.
second most anticipated. But
Right.
as a whole, I think I have to put them at 3, which I'll explain more when we talk about my 2. But I mean, like you're saying earlier, like when October rolls around and it's crisp, the air is crisp. There's just something a little bit different. It's a different style of play. I feel
Yeah.
like it's one of the more noticeable sports in terms of style. Every sport kind of it takes a little bit something different to win in the playoffs, but
Hmm.
baseball you can really see how that is. Like teams will drop down a bunt here where they wouldn't in the right. You can just see that each game means so much more, partially
Hmm.
because the value of games in the playoffs is just so much more than the regular season with the
Hmm.
162 games. I mean, if you lose one, you know that you have 100 more or whatever.
Yeah.
Whereas in the playoffs,
It
sometimes
matters.
with the new format, some of these teams they could be out in 2 games. Um, so it's just awesome. And like you were saying with the Patriots, luckily I was not born any earlier than I was, because I don't even know what it would have felt like to be a Red Sox fan, but being born when I was, I can somewhat remember when, like, the early days of like 04, 05, and then certainly 07, 13 is forever imprinted because of what it meant to the city. And then
Mm,
18 was just such a cool experience being at college. And 18 was weird because I was like the baseball, like,
the
out of
guy.
the people I was hanging out with at the time, I liked baseball the most. So
Mhm.
people, it was like
Right, right,
okay,
right.
I got to sit right in the front center of the couch. Like, people, it was
Mhm.
me and like a couple other people that were right
Sure.
there. Um, but yeah, playoff baseball is just so cool. And the graphics team, I have a lot of issues with some of the broadcasters and stuff, but the graphics teams for Fox and TBS, when it comes to the playoffs, they nail it. They throw the leaves on there, they get the
Yeah.
vibes going. It's just a great time of the year. And I know a lot of people will already be in football mode or basketball mode, but for me, like, I cannot even really care about those other sports
Yeah.
until the final pitch of the World Series has been thrown. And one more thing, baseball has one of the top two celebrations in sports, because you
Catcher,
get
sure.
it's one of the only sports where you can get a true dog pile. And when that final out is thrown and you just see hats and gloves and masks just flying in the air. I mean, I'm sure a lot of people have seen like the zoomed out shots of
Yeah.
baseball teams celebrating are just awesome. So,
Yeah.
as a big fan of celebrations, baseball's always had that spot for me.
I'll give you that. I'll give you that. But all right, my number three. Very tough, as I mentioned, at number four, but it's the NBA playoffs. Uh, could have been predicted. I just like basketball and football are just set apart from all the other sports for me. It's the way it's always been, and so it has to be. These have to both be at the top. They're the if I could critique, I know a lot of people think the NBA playoffs are tough because they are so long.
They are
Um,
super long, yeah.
NHL rides the same way, but it literally will take like 2 months from the start. Personally, I think the first round should be best of five, which I think it was at one time.
Oh,
I just feel like
really?
that would make it a little better. I think so. Back in like the
Huh.
80s, maybe even 90s. Could be wrong, but I think so. I just feel like that first round should be best of five. I think it'll make it a little bit better. But I just love there's something about playing a best of seven series where like you got to battle it out and over a stretch of games, like you got to prove that you're the better team. Um, Nothing like game sevens that are just so crazy with the way that it's been built up. And
Mhm.
I just love every day I'm sitting there, I'm watching playoff basketball for 2 months, every night, pretty much. I'm watching playoff basketball till you get to the finals and they do like 3 years in between each game.
Yeah, the finals is
But,
tough.
um, but I just, and the number of great series. I remember a couple years ago, 2 years ago, that Brooklyn Nets Milwaukee Bucks series was so good. The Bucks Celtics series this year, so good. Celtics Heat this year, like I there's basketball is my favorite sport at the end of the day. It's
Mhm.
very close between football, but it is my favorite. And so that when it comes playoff time and the way the game is played, like we talk about baseball, is so different. You know, the lineups get shortened, defense really matters. It becomes much more of a half court game. It's you can see that there's like more of a chess match going on. Every possession matters so much. Um, I love it. I Some of my best memories were the Thunder dominating in the playoffs. Some of my worst memories of the Thunder blowing leads in the playoffs. So like I've just felt the weight, like the emotions that you feel with it are so high.
It has
I
been
love it.
getting better recently.
Oh yeah, because
But definitely
we'll
not as
admit,
good as it was, I would say. Like, I feel like it's not at its peak. I feel like it was, I feel like, really, really, really good kind
mhm,
of late 2000s, early 2010s sort of time, and then the LeBron and Warriors thing was,
Right.
I mean, that was, I mean,
Certainly was horrible. It was
I
horrible.
wasn't
It was
even
like
bothering. Now I'll turn on the games kind of thing if I'm not busy and whatever, I'm looking for something to watch. But when that stuff was happening, I
it
wasn't
was
even bothering.
3 years of a wasted time without a doubt. But
Yeah,
it's at a point now where there's a lot of teams
they're getting
that are
back to it.
good, and it looks like last year in the East, legitimately those top 4 seeds, any 4 of them could have made the finals, and I'm not surprised.
Mhm.
I would have been surprised if the Mavericks made the finals last year, but they went on a run. Like they made the Western Conference Finals, beat the best team in the league that year, record wise, beating the Suns, killed them in Game 7. Like I can't. That Game 7, I cannot think of a game in my life that has been more unexpected than that one.
That was the one they lost by like 40 or something.
Yeah, just destroyed them.
Yeah.
It was unreal. Um,
Yeah.
if
I think
if
if there is a critique of the NBA playoffs right now, I think that still could be a little bit more competitive, like in terms of
yeah,
upsets and stuff. I feel like it does have that problem where, like, I know the Mavericks went on a run, but like in the East, especially, I feel like, there were teams that it was like they just shouldn't even be here kind of
yeah,
thing. Um,
which is natural because you let 8 teams from each conference make it. There's always going to be teams that it's just like,
yeah, it's getting back
all
to a
right, all
decent
right,
spot though.
but yeah, like it was interesting this year because the Celtics were a 2 seed, right? Yeah, 2 seed,
Mhm.
and they're playing the Brooklyn Nets as a 7, and people were saying even with them as a 7, the Brooklyn Nets could win the finals. Obviously, it ended up being not
Yeah.
very competitive,
Cool.
but even still, like all 4 of those games were good. Like they
Mhm.
swept them, but it wasn't. Sometimes the closeness of each game also matters. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like that series was way more competitive
It
than
was
a
a
five.
close sweep. Yeah.
Right. Then like a 5 game series where a team steals one, but they get killed 4 times. Like
Right.
that's worse. That series was different.
Right.
But love it. And then my number 2 is the NBA Finals.
Yeah. I had a feeling. I
This
had
is
a
you got to
feeling
feel
this
like
is how you were going to pull this
so
off.
the reason I separated them, and I thought about doing like NBA playoffs as a whole as one, like you did with baseball. I'm assuming I know what your number 2 is.
Uh-huh.
They're like the championship, the finals are just so different. The feel of them is so different from the playoffs. Like the feel of the Western Conference Finals and the semifinals is different, but it's not crazy. Um, the TV setup of the finals, the graphics,
That's true.
everything's completely different.
Hmm.
And those games, part of it probably is the space in between each game where it just feels completely different. It feels like it's way more important. And obviously it is. It's the championship, but it's
Yeah. I don't know how they do that because
the
it isn't quite that. I would say that is among the sports with series, the NBA Finals probably does the best job of
where it stands out.
separating it from the rest of the playoffs for some reason.
Exactly.
Maybe it's just because it's on ESPN and that's for like the week leading up to it. That's all they talk about or something. I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know, but like watching the Celtics Warriors was way different than watching the Celtics Heat,
Yeah.
Celtics Bucks. And those were amazing series with teams that could win the finals like that. But just the actual finals felt so different. Um, and the iconic performances that we've had in the finals over the years. I mean, obviously what Curry did this year, unbelievable. What Giannis did in game like the clinching game, especially against the Suns, 50 points and I think like 6 or 7 blocks, something like that. Um, Maybe the most outrageous thing I've ever seen, where he was horrible free throw shooter and he went like 17 of 18 or something from the line in the game 6. Um, Obviously, LeBron has had incredible finals performances. Kawhi with the Raptors, like it's my favorite sport and it's the best of my favorite sport. Um, hard to. It has to be in the
Yeah.
top two.
I had a
Almost
feeling
one.
I had a feeling it was going if this is the direction you were going.
Yeah.
When you had the NFL playoffs at 4, I had a feeling that
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
I I think I've had your top 3 like correct from that
Yeah.
point.
Yeah. And
I
my
will
top
say the
four.
NBA Finals they got on my paper. It was a quick cross out, but it at least
Yeah.
was in the
Yeah.
I thought of it.
I mean, you were texting me. You were watching this year. You
I
were
was
paying
watching it
attention.
because it was the Celtics.
Yep.
I'm trying to get a little bit back into basketball because I do have fond memories of, like I was saying, like the late 2000s, early
Mhm.
2010s was kind of Celtics and Lakers going back and forth. I have fond memories of that time. So
Mhm.
now that the biggest fraud in sports has kind of seemed to move on,
Hey, I don't know.
I
He's
think
he's not
I
he's not
think the
done yet.
sport is getting back to a good place. So
There you go.
fortunately,
There
the
you go.
Celtics didn't pull it out, but
Yeah.
yeah.
So.
All right. My number 2 is the Stanley Cup playoffs.
Mhm.
And what I meant with the World Series was if I was just doing the finals from a overall, just without knowing who's in it, I would probably be more excited for the World Series because of the history and the special feeling of it that we're talking about.
Mhm.
Whereas there have been Stanley Cups that, not that I'm not excited for them,
Mhm.
but sort of just like when the Penguins and the Predators played, it was sort of like, yeah, it's the Stanley Cup, but it's not two teams that I'm super invested in who wins. It would have been cool for the Predators to win, but it wasn't like the biggest deal when the Penguins won.
Mhm.
But just as a whole, for some reason, the Stanley Cup playoffs are just great. And maybe it's because there's more games, because there's more teams in and or something like that. So those first couple rounds
Mhm.
are just really exciting to watch. I honestly, on the paper, I have it at 3 and I have the MLB at 2, but I made a quick switch
Okay.
because I was just really thinking about it. But I don't like the current format of the Stanley Cup playoffs. Like the previous, where it was just 1 through 8, the way basketball does it, was just so much better.
I agree.
I hate that they're trying to force rivalries. It has worked to an extent, but they've almost gone overkill. It almost was something that could have worked if they'd done it like 3 years in a row, bang, 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 and got rid of it, because the Bruins and Leafs do hate each other. But at this point, it's almost like, okay, we've beat them 3 or 4 years in a row. Us
Yeah.
beating them, the satisfaction of stopping them from moving on has decreased so drastically that it's kind of like the difference there. When if they were to beat the Bruins, their fan base, it would be the biggest deal in the world.
Mhm.
But we don't have as much of a stake in it, other than let's just get past them into the next round at this point, because we've
Yeah.
been there and done that almost.
Yeah.
But playoff hockey, I mean,
I mean,
it's
yeah.
just so insane. You have it. I mean, so hockey and basketball are great because they're inside, so the noise is all contained. It's some of the loudest
Mhm.
atmospheres in sports. Hockey is so great because you're not scoring every minute. That you could go 60 minutes without seeing a goal and then get one in overtime, and
And the
all that
eruption.
excitement has
Ooh.
been building for 3 periods, and it's just tense, and then you see that puck go in and it's just an absolute explosion of noise. It's just such a special atmosphere. They used to do some special things. It used to be every team got a spotlight for the playoffs, even if you didn't in the regular season. They used to have the playoffs on the ice, which was really cool. Some of that
Yeah.
stuff they've kind of stepped it back a little, but it's just such a cool time of the year, and
And
just
an eight.
it's kind of the equal to your NBA playoffs. You and me, like it's the same time of the year. Our two of our favorite
Yeah.
sports. It's just such a cool time.
Right. And an 8 seed has won the Stanley Cup,
Yeah,
right? The Kings are an 8 seed.
the Kings were an
That's
8 seed. The Kings
that's
were an eight
nuts.
seed, and I believe that was the year it was an 8 seed and a 6 seed in the finals.
Really.
That's a great thing about, like we were
Like
saying with
you'll never.
basketball. The only like one of the critiques is that it's not super competitive sometimes. The NHL, literally any
Yeah.
one of those 16 teams could win it. There are years like this year. the Lightning and the Avalanche, that was a pretty chalk Stanley Cup final. You could have easily predicted those two teams. You could have
Right.
easily predicted the Avalanche to win it. A lot of
Right.
people did. But if one of those teams got upset, it would not have been the biggest surprise in the world. The year before the Lightning went on this crazy run that they're on, they got swept by the 8 seed. They were one of the
Wow.
best teams in NHL history, and they got swept out of the first round. So it's you
Crazy.
just
Yeah,
never know what's going to
you'll never
happen.
see that in basketball.
Yeah,
You
you just
know,
never know what's going to
I
happen in the Stanley Cup
I'm gonna
playoffs.
say, I want to say there's only been one team ever in NBA history that won the finals that wasn't a top 3 seed.
Really?
Maybe it's top 4, but
Wow, I did not know that.
I know a 5 seed has never won. I know a 7 seed and 8 seed has never won. The 6 seed that won it was the Rockets in the 90s, and it was their second year in a row. So they won it the year before. Were a great
Wow.
team. The team kind of got shaken up. There was like a trade. And so it was kind of like the team was just out of sorts for a
Uh-huh.
lot of the season, but they had just won the championship. They had the pieces and they put it together as a 6 seed and won the finals.
Wow.
I don't think
Did not know that.
I kind of think a 4 seed has never won it, but I could be wrong.
Hmm.
Um,
But yeah, in the Stanley Cup, like
yeah,
anything could
different, very
happen.
different. Yeah.
Anything can happen. And then my number one is the World Cup.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a part of me that feels a little bit bad that my third favorite sport has the top spot,
Mm-hmm.
but I just don't think I think it has to be there. I mentioned it with my number 10 with the Olympics. I just love international sports because there's just something special to me about seeing people represent the country that you're born in, as opposed to being drafted by a team or signing by a team and you have to wear those colors. You know that everyone suiting up in that tournament has a biological or heritage associated with that country. And that is just so cool in those kinds of events.
Mm-hmm.
And to me, the World Cup is the international event, even above the Olympics, because
I'd
it
agree.
has separated itself from the Olympics, if that makes sense,
Mm-hmm.
because it has been able to independently establish itself as the most important tournament in sports. I feel like it's not crazy to say that if you asked any soccer player whether they would rather win a Premier League or a Champions League or any whatever their domestic league is or the World Cup,
They
I
all
feel like
choose
it's
World
not
Cup.
crazy to think that they would give up any domestic trophy for a World Cup,
I think
because
so.
the other thing about the World Cup is unless you're Messi, Ronaldo, or a generational player, you're probably only playing in 2 or 3 at most. So you have a very
And
limited
3?
amount of chances.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's just and like you said, it's just a special time of the year. Typically, it's the summer. I'm a little bit skeptical about this one. It's just such a weird feeling to have it coming up.
The
It's not the
and
same kind of vibe.
the corruption that's
Yeah,
so blatant with this
they
one
should have
is
scrapped this a long time ago, really, but it's still a
yeah.
World Cup. And going back and watching old World Cups it's some of the most nostalgic things you can do, because somehow maybe it's the graphics, maybe I don't even know what it is, but going back and watching old World Cup highlights almost just brings you back to that
Mhm.
World Cup and the feelings that you were there and the distinct feelings associated with each World Cup, whether it's Russia or Brazil or South Africa. It's just something special about the World Cup where you can have separate feelings associated with each tournament. And I mean, some of the most famous moments in all of soccer history are at the World Cup, of course.
Yeah.
I even remember I didn't start watching soccer really thoroughly until probably 2013, 2014.
Hmm.
I vividly remember watching the Zidane headbutt when I was 6 years old. And that's something that I have never forgotten. Even before I started watching soccer, that just stuck out to me. I could just tell that that was such a big moment. I didn't really know why at the time, I didn't really understand who Zidane was, how
Yeah.
good he was, but that moment was just able to connect with me as someone who didn't even like soccer at the time, really. So,
Hmm.
yeah, I mean, I'm glad it made it onto your list because it's my
Has
number
to.
one.
Yeah.
It's just it's the biggest spectacle in all of sports, in my opinion, in worldwide.
Yeah.
And that's the
Yeah.
other crazy thing is it's the most watched event
Yeah.
in the world. And I remember hearing that for the first time and being shocked because, it's not huge here. And I was like, oh, well, what's going on? But it's just such a worldwide event
Yeah.
that it gets that
Absolutely.
spot. And I know what your number one is, but go ahead.
It's the Super Bowl.
Yeah.
Has to be. Um, so I said basketball is my favorite sport, which is true. But it's so close. And the thing about the Super Bowl is the one game kind of gives it the edge over the NBA finals for me, which ironically, I feel like if you made the NBA playoffs single game do or die, it would make it worse. And if there was a way to make the NFL playoff series, I think it would make the NFL worse. Um, but it's just such a spectacle, that Super Bowl Sunday. It has the 2 weeks of lead up to it, um, that are just incredible. I mean, the scale of an event that the Super Bowl is, right? World Cup, obviously worldwide. There's other things worldwide that are bigger. But as far as in the United States, like the Super Bowl is
Yeah.
borderline a holiday. Um, I just side note, Josh Allen, I saw he was proponent for them adding a second bye week to the NFL season. He really thinks they should give teams 2 bye weeks. I hated the idea, except for the fact that now it would mean that every year the Super Bowl is the day before President's Day. And I think that would
Oh, and
be
then you get the day off.
amazing. I think it would be amazing if they did that.
Huh.
But I mean, you think about just the amount it costs to purchase a time slot to have a commercial in the
Yeah.
Super Bowl. Like,
Whew.
it is on a scale like nothing else in the US. Um, and it's funny what you said about the Zidane headbutt, because for me, my first memories of being a sports fan are the 2006 NFL season. And I can like remember the Patriots blowing the 21-3 lead to the Colts in the AFC Championship. And I can like remember my dad shutting off the game and I like cried. Like I vividly remember that.
See, I also remember that season, but I just remember Devin Hester running back the kickoff.
Which is what I was gonna say. So I remember that Super Bowl, Devin Hester running back the kickoff.
Oh
Um,
man, Devin Hester, dude. Remember that?
Legend,
Remember those like
legend.
5 years or whatever it was? Like he burned brightly, but it was
What
short.
what he did as a returner is Deion Sanders, the only one that can compare, but
Yeah.
I don't think he's like Devin Hester is in a world of his own. But and also just I can tell you what happened in every Super Bowl going back to like the 80s. So lots of which I have not experienced.
Mhm.
But I still can like with detail give you every Super Bowl that's happened in our lifetime, which I can't necessarily do in the finals. Almost I can for the NBA, but um, I just remember watching each of them, and obviously every Super Bowl has had extra weight as a fan because for the vast majority of my life, the Super Bowl was either a game the Patriots played or a game that the Patriots were incredibly close to playing in.
Yeah.
So I'm watching the team that eliminated them 2 weeks prior. Like that's the majority of the games. Um,
Do you
but
think 2 weeks is too much?
I kind of think it works.
You think?
The week off just adds something, and it just um, the buildup of like the media day for it that week before is pretty incredible. Obviously, what they do in that bye week with the Pro Bowl has been a disgrace for years, but they're changing it, so that's good.
Yeah.
Um, and also, I think, which in our lifetime, the number of incredible Super Bowls is really high. For a long time, there's a lot of like blowouts, a lot of bad games. In our lifetime, how many games have been blowouts? 2002, Bucks Raiders, Seahawks Broncos was a blowout.
Yeah. Which we
Fucking
watched.
Yes, we
We were
did.
at my house. That was my birthday.
There we go. And we
And
also
I remember my my dad went out to get the pizza, and by the time he got back, it was like 14-2 or
it was
something.
over because first play of the game I think was the safety snapped
Yeah,
over
something like
Manning's
that.
head. That was ugly quick.
Yeah.
And then Bucks Chiefs a couple years ago. Other than that,
Mhm.
it's like incredible game. Like every Super Bowl the Patriots have played in has been really good. Um,
Except
two
for
of
the
the
Rams one. The
but
second Rams one. I feel like
but
it was
it's
a close game, but it wasn't a I wouldn't say it was a good game.
it was a good defensive game, but it was
Yeah,
close.
I guess.
Um,
I think it
yeah,
it wasn't like a you know how there are defensive games where it's like, oh man, the defenses are really showing up today. Like this is I feel like the previous national championship was kind of like that until like the last quarter. Like the
mhm,
defenses were just going all out. I don't
mhm.
know why, but the Patriots Rams, it just felt like the offenses were stinking for some reason. I don't know
Yeah.
why it felt
I
like that, but it was just
yeah,
I just remember that game. It was like, all right, what are we doing here?
yeah. I get it. But I mean the Patriots Rams in 01, historic upset game-winning field goal. 2 years later game-winning field goal, and that Super Bowl, people like was one of the weirdest Super Bowls ever, where the first like 27 minutes offenses could not do anything. And then they scored like 20 something combined points in the last like 2 minutes of that game. So
Was that the Panthers one?
yeah, Panthers. Um, obviously the '07 Super Bowl is iconic for bad reasons. Um, I
Yeah.
mean, 2012, where it comes down to the 49ers are on the goal line and they get stopped 4 plays in a row. Um, maybe not the goal line, maybe goal to go scenario, but
With the
right there,
blackout.
yeah, right there with the blackout halfway through. Um, the Patriots Falcons, Patriots
Yeah.
Seahawks, um,
Eagles one was a good game
Eagles one was a
from a
in,
neutral
in,
standpoint.
incredible game.
This past
Uh,
year was pretty good. Bengals
yeah,
Rams.
it
Would have
was a
loved to
good.
see the Bengals pull it out, but it was a solid game.
I agree. Yeah, the some horrible officiating is what bothered me about this one, where there's game-changing plays that there were blatantly missed calls.
Yeah.
That bothers me. But
The officials have been tough
yeah,
recently, I would
yeah.
say.
But even like the Chiefs 10-point comeback in the fourth quarter against the 49ers, like that's a great game. Um, another one we were at your house for, Panthers Broncos.
Yep.
Like not a great game, but a good game,
No,
like
yeah.
close game throughout. There's just been so many that it just this Super Bowl has to take my top spot.
Yeah, I had a feeling that would have been my guess. I was a little bit nervous that you might go finals over Super Bowl, but my guess was that it would be
You're
Super Bowl then
nervous.
finals. Because not necessarily nervous, but like I thought I had it, and I was like,
Yeah.
he might do
Okay.
this
Okay.
and
Yeah.
throw me off here, but
Yeah.
that's what I thought. All right, did you have any? Was there stuff that almost made the list that
Yeah.
didn't quite make it? Should we go? Do
Stanley.
you want to run through our list first, or should we run through the honorable mentions, sort of?
I say run through honorable
All
mentions.
right,
Then we'll
let's
do
go
that.
through the honorable
So
mentions.
I have two honorable mentions. One of
Okay.
them was the Champions League final.
Okay.
It didn't belong on my list, but I was thinking about it. Like
Yeah, that's fair, I
have
think, for you.
I have not watched. Like I watched one at your house. I don't remember which one that year was.
I feel like
Yeah.
you'll follow it, but you won't necessarily if it's on, you might watch it, but you
Right.
won't go
Like
seek it out.
my favorite team was in the final a couple years ago. I didn't watch that game. Like
Yeah.
I
They
like
lost.
and they did lose. But so that one didn't belong. The other one that was really close is the Stanley Cup playoffs.
Okay.
Just because playoff hockey, I think if I was just talking objectively, I think it's the best playoffs in American sports.
Hmm.
And I wish I liked hockey more than I do. It's the weirdest thing. Like I wish I was a big hockey fan, but and maybe it's the fact that the NBA playoffs are at the same time.
Yeah, that could be
But
it.
it's just I'm not really watching it unless the Bruins are playing. And so that's why everything else that was on there is like I'm watching this pretty consistently. So it was close, but I just couldn't quite. And I think, yeah. So yeah,
Yeah, fair enough.
tough.
I had a bunch of them. The Euros. I mean, I just think that's
Yeah.
a cool tournament, but I don't think there's room for both on here. MLB All-Star Game, really wanted to put it on there because one of the coolest traditions was when every player would wear their own team's jersey. You'd have the mismatch of all the teams, but they don't do that anymore. And they used to
Tough.
it used to be just by far the best All-Star Game. I think it's probably still is the best All-Star Game because it's the closest thing to the actual sport. But it used to be for something. Players used to be going all out. I mean, there have been collisions at the plate during the All-Star Game because people are going all out. Not quite that anymore, so I couldn't put it on there.
I don't like the fact that it could have determined a World Series, though.
I understand why it shouldn't from a competitive standpoint, but it kind of was a cool quirk.
No,
I will say
absolutely cool, but it
yeah. If I was from a fan standpoint, I loved it. If I was a player and I was in games, if I was headed to Game 6 because they do the 2-3-2, if I was headed to Game 6, knowing that my next 2 games were on the road because a bunch of dudes that aren't here right now lost the game. Yeah, I would have been mad, but from a fan standpoint, I thought it was cool.
Sure.
Little League World Series is just a really cool event. It's if we had done this as kids, it would have been in my top 10 because I loved it. But now watching it, it's not quite the same. I had the Super Bowl, I had the NBA Finals, the World Baseball Classic, again, international competition. It hasn't quite established itself yet, but every time it's there, I'll get really excited for it. It's coming up next summer or next winter kind of thing. It's a weird one because it's kind of off season, but and then the Bean Pot, kind of cool college tournament. Haven't been as up on it recently though. And then the last one was the World Junior Championship for hockey, which is another one. If I was younger, probably would have had it in there. Just the best junior players, like 20-year-olds from all around the world. It's super cool. But yeah, those are my honorable mentions. All right, this is a long one. Hopefully people will find it interesting. But let's run through our top 10. I got Winter Olympics, College World Series, NCAA hockey tournament, Winter Classic, Summer Olympics, March Madness, the Champions League final, the MLB playoffs, the Stanley Cup playoffs, and the World Cup.
I had Duke versus UNC, Christmas Day basketball, World Series, World Cup, NFL opening Sunday, March Madness, NFL playoffs, NBA playoffs, the NBA finals, and the Super Bowl.
Definitely different lists.
I had 3 events that were not football or basketball.
How many did we overlap on? We had
3.
We'll say the World Cup, March Madness, and then like the MLB playoffs, World Series we'll count that as an overlap.
Yeah.
I can't believe we nailed it on the March Madness. That was great.
I love that. But
all right, that was interesting. Hey, you caught me by surprise with a few of those.
I know I did. Duke UNC to start it was
yeah, that was a bold move.
Yeah, it was.
That was a crazy move.
I was happy with it. I knew it would be, and I'm happy I did it. But
good.
All right.
I don't know what our next one's going to be. We'll have to decide after we finish the recording. But yeah, that was a long one. Hopefully it was interesting though. It was a good one to talk about though. I feel like it's something we don't really think about it that consciously, but I feel like it's there subconsciously for everyone. So
kudos to you for thinking of it.
Thank you. Hopefully the next one we'll do a shorter one next time. Do like a top 5 or something.
Yeah, we have a couple top 5s on here. We'll roll with that.
But I think this was an interesting one, so hopefully people enjoyed it. But that's it for this one.
Good stuff.
I hope you enjoyed this episode of the Rank and Debate podcast. If you did, if you would be so kind as to subscribe if you're watching on YouTube or listening on Spotify or Apple Podcasts. If you're on YouTube, if you would be so kind as to leave a like on the video, that would be amazing. Or if you're listening to it on a podcast service, please, rate the show or share it with a friend. It would mean a lot to us. We really enjoy talking about this stuff. So if you think a friend would enjoy it, if you wouldn't mind mentioning it to them and sending them our way, that would just be awesome. Otherwise, hope you enjoy the rest of your day. Thank you for listening. I hope you had a good time.